Is Jasprit Bumrah the greatest fast bowler of this generation or just a stat padder?
This is a very peculiar video, and this is something we don't usually do, but we've decided to compare three of the best active fast bowlers going around in Test cricket and then to see who stands up on top. We have, of course, considered a lot of metrics, a lot of conditions, and a lot of batters against whom these bowlers have bowled against. And hopefully by the end of the video, you get a clear idea of where these bowlers stand against each other. Now, before we talk about Bumrah, Rabada, and Pat Cummins, hit that subscribe button.
Before we go ahead with the video, mental health is very important to us. Not only to us, but it's also important to us to support our supporters, our subscribers, viewers, people who choose to watch our videos, which is also why we have collaborated with Adapt Wellness, which is a mental health organization, where you'll get a 15% off on your first therapy session. All you have to do is go to the website, choose your therapist, go to their Instagram account, tell them the choice of your therapist, type JB first, and get your first therapy session on a 15% off. All the links are in our description. So take care not only of your physical health, but also of your mental health.
Before we get into the nitty-gritties of their comparison, let's look at the overall numbers for all of these fast bowlers. Starting off with Jasprit Bumrah, in the 51 games that he's played thus far, he's picked up 232 wickets. He averages a brilliant 19.5 with a strike rate of 42.2, but what's more impressive is that this man has picked up 16 5-wicket hauls. In fact, Bumrah is so good with his averages that he has the second best average in the history of Test cricket ever. He also has the third best strike rate in Test cricket history, and he's India's fifth highest wicket taker for a pacer. And from there, we move to Kagiso Rabada. In the 73 games that he's played, he's picked up 340 wickets. Rabada averages 22 and strikes at 39 with the ball. Along with this, he's not only comparable but also slightly better than Bumrah in that he's got 17 5-wicket hauls and 4 10-wicket hauls in a match. In fact, this is the most number of 10-wicket hauls taken by a South African pacer. Along with this, Rabada also has the best strike rate ever in the history of Test cricket. And coming to Pat Cummins, he's picked up 309 wickets in the 71 Test matches that he's played. He averages 22.1 with the ball and strikes at 45.9. Along with this, he has 14 fifers and 2 10-wicket hauls. Cummins is the 6th highest wicket taker for Australia for an Australian pacer, and along with this, he also has the 7th best strike rate in the history of Test cricket.
And this is why we start comparing each of the bowlers under different conditions. Are they home bullies, and do they also get wickets away from home? If you look at Jasprit Bumrah, he has the best strike rate and average amongst any Indian fast bowlers at home. If you look at Kagiso Rabada, he has the most 10-wicket hauls. And once again, if you look at Pat Cummins, he has the best strike rate and average for an Australian fast bowler at home. And this is where things get a little more interesting, because we'll take each of the fast bowlers and compare them in different countries. Something to note here is that we've taken countries that all three of those fast bowlers have at least played one Test match in. Now, if you look at this table and you look at countries and the best strike rate and averages and the names under each, you will realize that Jasprit Bumrah clearly stands out. Jasprit Bumrah has the best average and strike rate in Australia, of course at home in India, and also the West Indies. Whereas Kagiso Rabada has the best strike rate and average in England and South Africa. And the only country where the stats are shared is in New Zealand, where Pat Cummins has the best average and Kagiso Rabada has the best strike rate. Now, what's astonishing is when you look at Jasprit Bumrah and wherever he stands out in this table, his best average is in the country with the least seam-friendly conditions, and that's India. He averages just 16. And then when you look at someone like Rabada, it's no surprise that he of course does well at home, and that's South Africa. But even his average in England stands out of just 22. Because if you were to compare his pace to someone like a Dale Steyn averaged 31 in England. So for someone like a Rabada with that pace to average 22 is only impressive. But of course, something you have to keep in mind that these players have not played equal number of matches in each of the countries, and that's something for you guys to keep in mind.
And from looking at how these bowlers do in different conditions, the next thing to look at is also the quality of wickets they are getting. Especially with the narrative going around that Jasprit Bumrah is someone who is a bit of a stat padder because he tends to get a lot of lower order wickets. However, we compare this for all of the bowlers on this list and look at if that's actually true and how their distribution of wickets is. We've looked at how many times these bowlers have dismissed either the top 4 batters or the bottom 4 batters of each batting lineup. And what you'll see from this table is that it's Patrick Cummins who gets the most number of top 4 wickets, while it is Jasprit Bumrah who does a great job at cleaning up the tail. Pat Cummins gets 46.2% of all of his wickets by getting the top 4 batters out, whereas Bumrah gets 31% of his wickets as the last 4 batters to be dismissed. And from here, what's another thing to take note of is how a bowler does against a particular batting style. Now, we know that there are a lot more right-handers, so it's natural that the percentage of wickets that these bowlers get will be more of right-handers. But in terms of their bowling averages, we take a look at how comfortable they are bowling against either a right-hand batsman or a left-hand batsman. And what you'll see here is that Kagiso Rabada clearly stands out, because he's the only bowler bowler to have a sub 20 average versus both the lefties as well as the righties. In fact, against the left-handers, it's completely insane because he averages just 17.4. Whereas Bumrah does this against a right-handed batter where he has a sub 20 average, averaging 19.6. And here is where you'll start seeing a little bit of difference between Rabada, Bumrah as well as Pat Cummins. This is where the distance starts to set in, because if you look at Pat Cummins, in terms of his averages versus lefties or righties, he's definitely not close to either Bumrah or Rabada. In fact, against lefties, Pat Cummins has got the least percentage of wickets amongst all of the other players on this list, and he also has an average of almost 25.
So for now, we have talked about their overall numbers, how they've done in each of the countries, and also how they've done against different styles of batters. And this is why we'll get into how they've done against the best batters in the world, which are batters who have averaged more than 45 plus in the last 10 years. Now this is very fascinating because if you go all the way back to Pat Cummins' debut, he was the first one amongst the three of them to make his debut, and then it was Rabada and then Jasprit Bumrah. Yet, Jasprit Bumrah has taken most amount of dismissals against these kind of batters. Bumrah and Rabada have taken more than 30 wickets, whereas Pat Cummins has taken 27 wickets. But if you look at just this particular metric, you'll realize that Bumrah is on another level because he's the only bowler amongst these three bowlers to have an average in the 20s. He averages 23 and a strike rate in the 50s. Yani strikes at 58. Whereas surprisingly, Rabada is the worst because he has an average of 34 and he has a strike rate of 64 against these kind of batters. So right, we have now looked at how they do against certain kind of batters, but how do they do in a certain innings of a test match? And this is where you realize that the distance between Pat Cummins and Bumrah Rabada just increase. Because if you look at this chart, you'll realize that Bumrah does really well in the first half of the test match. He has the best strike rate and average in the first innings, and he has the best average in the second innings. Whereas Rabada stands out in the second half of a test match. Because even though he has the best strike rate in the second and the third innings, Kagiso Rabada has the best average and the strike rate in the fourth innings. The fact that Jasprit Bumrah has a sub 20 average in the second and the third innings should just tell you about how he gets into a test match.
And sure, now we've looked at all of this, but the most important question is, are these fast bowlers able to actually contribute to their team's victories, or are they just getting a lot of wickets? In the 22 test matches that Jasprit Bumrah has won, his numbers are brilliant because he's got 117 wickets, and along with this, his averages and strike rate are insane. He averages just 14.8, has a strike rate of just 32.8, but what's even more impressive is that he's got 9 5-wicket hauls. Now if you look at Kagiso Rabada, in the 38 test matches that he's won, he's got 223 wickets. Once again, his numbers are brilliant where he has an average of 17.1 and a strike rate of 32. But this is where Kagiso Rabada outdoes all of the other bowlers on this list. And that's because of the 17 5-wicket hauls that he's got in his test career, 16 of these 5-wicket hauls and 4 of the 10-wicket hauls that he's gotten have all come in the situation of victories. And with Pat Cummins and the 41 test matches that he's won, he's got 192 wickets. Compared to Bumrah and Rabada, Cummins is slightly less impressive. Although he has a really good average of 18, his strike rate is 41. Cummins too has got 10 fifers and 2 10-wicket hauls in victories. And so from all of this, what stands out is that Kagiso Rabada has got the most percentage of wickets in victories. He's got 65% of all of his test wickets for South Africa when they've gone on to win games of cricket. And unfortunately for Jasprit Bumrah, that number comes down to 50.4%. Now of course, this does not mean that these bowlers are not contributing to their team's victories, because at the end of the day, cricket is a team sport. And so even if Bumrah has a test match where he picks up all 20 wickets, the batters still need to come out and score runs so that the team eventually wins. Now with all of this said and done, something we also need to understand is that test matches are a long period of cricket. What this means is that there are multiple spells for which these fast bowlers will come back, and it is important to understand if they're effective only with the newer ball or if they're also effective in the middle overs, and especially towards the end of the day when they're tiring out. And so we also looked at phase-wise numbers for each of these bowlers from the overs of 0 to 20, 21 to 60 and 61 to 80. This will not only give us an idea of how these bowlers perform when they have the new ball in their hands, but also how they do when they come back for later spells in the middle overs, as well as how they do just before getting that second new ball. And if you look at all of these numbers, you can clearly see that Kagiso Rabada is the one player who stands out in multiple categories. Not only is he extremely good in the overs of 0 to 20, where he also gets the highest percentage of wickets, but especially in the middle overs between overs 21 to 60, Kagiso Rabada is an unparalleled beast. Not only is his percentage of wickets higher than any of the other bowlers, but he also has a brilliant average as well as strike rate. With 151 wickets at an average of just 21.1 and an even more impressive strike rate of just 38, Kagiso Rabada outdoes any of the other bowlers in that middle phase. And in the overs of 61 to 80, it is Jasprit Bumrah who narrowly takes the cake, although Rabada here too has a better strike rate. Jasprit Bumrah here has picked up 29 wickets at just 16.6.
Now you might say that the last couple of stats don't account for similar conditions and matchups, and this is why we look at these bowlers when they've played against each other. And once again, if you've seen the trend up until now, it won't be a surprise when I tell you that Kagiso Rabada clearly stands out. Because not only has he taken more wickets, but he also has the best average and the strike rate against the Indian team playing against Bumrah. But he also has more wickets and has the better strike rate against the Australian team with Pat Cummins in the side. Interestingly though, even though Rabada has taken more wickets than Pat Cummins in less number of innings, Pat Cummins does have a better average as compared to Rabada. Pat Cummins has an average of 18.5. The contest between Jasprit Bumrah and Pat Cummins, however, is almost redundant because in every metric, Jasprit Bumrah outdoes Pat Cummins by a mile. Not only has Bumrah taken 10 more wickets as compared to Pat Cummins, Bumrah has a sub 20 average of just 17 and a sub 40 strike rate of just 39. And to almost finish this off, if you look at the fall shot percentage induced by each of these bowlers in 2024, if you look at the top two bowlers, again it is no surprise that it's Rabada and Bumrah after that, where Rabada induced a fall shot percentage of 27.3, Jasprit Bumrah induced a fall shot percentage of 26.7. And this is why we come back to the question that we posed on the start of the video. Who actually is the best active fast bowler? It's clear that if you look at these numbers, Rabada and Jasprit Bumrah are the best by a mile as compared to any other fast bowler in the world right now. Because of the age factor and the fact that Rabada is 100 plus wickets ahead of Jasprit Bumrah, it wouldn't be a surprise if Rabada finish ahead of these two fast bowlers by the end of their career. Of course, only time will tell where they finish and who they finish ahead of. And mind you, of course, we could compare them against a lot more variables, but unfortunately, this is all we have access to. This has been our video on comparing these three fast bowlers. If you've enjoyed this video, like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff. If you want to have a chat with us and with our community, go down to our Discord, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.
He's been making waves in the domestic circuit. So he's got a bunch of wickets. He did well in the Duleep Trophy. You would have seen him grab the headline for getting 4 wickets in 4 deliveries. Across 5 seasons, he's picked up 115 wickets at an average of 17.6
As a fast bowler,
in India.
You can only pick wickets against the team that you play against, and so if it's weak or strong, that's not up to you.
They clearly want strong, tall, fast bowlers who can hit the deck, who can hit 140.
Yet he doesn't get a place in the India A squad.
Do you pick players on just one really good season? Because then they can be one season wonders.
I also feel like the 28-year-old fast bowlers are also in a knife edge. Like if you don't perform this season, then you're gone and never coming back. Why am I not getting picked?